Greetings, everyone. My name is Stephen Neely. I'm your co-host for the virtual Dalcroze meetup, and we are just really excited to have a really great crowd together tonight. This is meetup number 49, which is jaw-dropping that we've met 49 times as of tonight to just have these sharing sessions with colleagues new and old from all sorts of edges of the Dalcroze universe. And so it's just really lovely to have everyone together. So welcome. Our normal routine is we break into quick breakout rooms to introduce each other, but we have a kind of a small crowd tonight, and more than half this crowd knows each other really well. And so I think we could try to just, instead of jumping, unless 5 new people arrive all of a sudden here in a second, let's just quickly go around and kind of say who we are. So what we normally say is, what's our name, where are we from, where do we live, and who do we teach? And if you don't teach anyone, you could say who you wish you taught or who you used to teach, or anything that you want to share, but nothing long. We normally try to keep it really fast. So I'm Stephen Neely. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I teach at Carnegie Mellon University, and I'm the one eurythmics teacher at Carnegie Mellon for all the undergraduate music majors. And so that's my jam. I'm handed over to Emma.
Hello, all. I'm Emma Shubin. I'm in Colorado. I run a little nonprofit called Integral Steps that has the honor of co hosting VDM. And I teach little ones like 6 months old and even a wee bit younger, all the way up through, let's say, those of us who are more advanced aged and beyond. And so, yeah, Dalcroze plus flute plus some piano and lots of improv in between.
Excellent. Nominate someone else to talk.
Veronica.
Hi, I'm Veronica Valevsky. I live in the Boston area. I teach flute and piano private lessons, and I teach Dalcroze classes to little kids. I teach private lessons to little kids and big kids and very big kids. So that's me. Maybe Steph.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Peoples, and I'm in a suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I teach public school K-5 general music, a little bit of fifth grade band, and I've done piano in the past too. Oh, and I got to pass it on to, how about Leslie?
I'm Leslie Upchurch. I live in Manhattan. I teach at the Lucy Moses School. I say cradle to grave, toddlers to seniors. And I do teacher training at Carnegie Mellon and also at the Lucy Moses School. And I teach piano, and I really enjoy teaching improv.
Nominate someone.
Let's see, Anthony.
Hi, I'm Anthony Molinaro. I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I teach K-5 public school. I teach at the Preparatory Academy at Carnegie Mellon University. I run a podcast and a Substack newsletter all about the Dalcroze method. I'm involved with Dalcroze Society of America, and I want to be your friend. So I'm going to pass it off to, let's see here, Nicola.
Okay, well, I already introduced myself. Hi, but I'll just take this chance to say I'm really fun hearing what everybody's up to. I also play flute. Just want to shout that out to other flute people here. And and I have taught. I once taught on a volunteer basis K1 general music with an ORF approach. It was before I knew about Dalcroze. Not that anyway. So I'm very much hoping to teach again. So that's part of my reason for, just trying to get involved and see what my path is. Excellent. Again, thank you all.
Yeah, Nicola, will you tell us again where you're located?
Yes, San Francisco.
Excellent. Welcome. You want to, Rebecca, will you say hi?
Sorry.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Hampel. I live in Austin, Texas, and I also teach Cradle to Grave. I'm a movement specialist and voice teacher.
Excellent. You want to nominate someone?
Jennifer.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny Lang and I'm based in Wilmington, Delaware, where I just moved a couple months ago. Prior to that, I was teaching in Mexico. And I currently teach violin. I'm the head of the Suzuki program at the Music School of Delaware. and I always love to incorporate Delcros into as many classes as possible, even though I don't have any formal training in it. But I found out about it in 2018 and have been a huge advocate of it since.
And
Let's see,
yeah,
who hasn't spoken yet? I missed a little bit. Jill raised her hand.
I am Jill Gleim. I live in Ipswich, Massachusetts, and I'm a dancer who learned Dalcroze, and so I teach music and dance together. And though never getting certified, use it as the base of all my learning, or teaching and learning. And I'm just, it's phenomenal how every time I talk to you guys and hear you speak, it's like what you're saying works everywhere in the world. How you approach teaching, what the magic that goes on in your classes. And I just finally, I've been under COVID restrictions, not able to be vaccinated, and just finally went back to teach this morning for a Halloween class. So that was just so much fun, and I had a great time. So nice to see everybody. Oh, is everybody gone?
I think
one more.
Alia.
yeah.
Or Aaliyah.
Hi, I'm Alia Maxwell, and I live outside Manhattan, about an hour away. And I've been really enjoying learning music through Dalcroze, getting a new experience of music. So I haven't been doing a lot of teaching. I have one piano student, and I was a teacher before I retired. I was not a classroom teacher. I was a tutor for a lot of different things. So I love the idea that perhaps I'll be able to use some of that individualized approach to people with music in some future.
Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. It's lovely to have you here. There's certainly no prerequisites to show up to the meetup or anything that the VDM does. We are just really happy to meet like-minded people who are interested in good teaching and have some curiosity or past experience in the Dalcroze work. So welcome. We have a couple quick announcements. Normally, Veronica, you got the first one or three? I had it in front of me and then I lost it.
So if you don't know, there's a short course that's currently running with Don Pratzen. I think we must be on session 4 or 5. And so there's a couple more. And so if you'd like to join us, this is a movement-based exploration, kind of adjacent to Dalcroze and implying a lot of Don's experience both as a Dalcroze teacher and as a choreographer and a flutist and a dancer. And if you sign up for that, you'll have access to all the past recordings if you want to catch up, so to speak, and then join us for the last few live, or you can just kind of watch them all at your own pace. We also have a new registration platform. So the cool thing about this is that you can go and search for past masterclasses based on a specific topic, which is like a huge change from just the never-ending list that we had before. And that's because we've grown big enough to need some subgroups there, and so we hope that that helps everybody find what they're looking for. And finally, I just was looking through our archives because I remembered that Anthony had shared something actually Halloween themed, and so if you teach kids and kids are giddy with excitement for Halloween a week from now, I have here a throwback to October 2020 meetup, see below. So if you scroll down in that agenda, you'll see on the second page, there's a box with meetup number 15 from October 2020. And if you click on that video link, that red text, you'll be able to see the meetup from about 2 years ago and a cool Halloween activity there, if that would be useful.
Very good. Also, anybody who's new or old, if you haven't, we encourage everybody to, sorry, to subscribe to the calendar. The VDM has a calendar, and if you actually subscribe to it, it'll populate your computer's calendar with our meetups in your time zone, which is a really nice thing. We do this later evening. We kind of toggle between a 2 o'clock and a 9 o'clock Eastern, thinking that our friends in Europe and then our friends in South Asia can attend one or the other, whereas people in the States can usually attend either one. But for some of us, 9 o'clock on the East Coast is a little bit late. So if you subscribe to the calendar, you can know what's coming. Well, tonight we've got some great friends who are here to present. And I think I heard that Leslie was to go first. So we have a couple good friends who have about 5 minutes each. Our normal routines are just to share a little bit, and then we'll have some time at the end to discuss all the things that were presented. So Leslie, I think we'll hand it over to you.
Okay, this is the beginning of my 50th year of teaching. And so as I don't know if I'm going to keep going past 50. But one thing that's happening to me is I have these routines and I feel like I'm sort of static, right? But then in having these routines, what I've begun to realize is that it gives me freedom to really notice what's going on in front of me, right? So I don't feel guilty about it anymore. I'm not scrambling like I have to get a new song or, because the toddlers take this year and then they don't see me again, right? Maybe their mothers see me 2 years later. So by I'm not trying to be so inventive or so interesting all the time. I realize my mind is on what's going on in front of me. But as I reflect back on all these years, the moments that I remember the most is when I said yes to something that I could have said no to. Okay, I mean, I can see the children's faces in those moments. Like it could have been 40 years ago, and I still see the kid's face in my mind. I think a lot of times we're trying to present. And so I try to look at it now like you throw something out and then you see what happens, right? I mean, I do that a lot. So I was just going to talk about a few of those that are so etched in my mind. So I was going to start with like preschool. Because I remember I was teaching at the JCC Tenafly preschool years ago when my daughter even went there. And I had a few moments that I remembered so clearly. And one of the activities I have is children could choose an instrument, and I would put them on the floor. Well, one day I'm sitting there singing my song about play the instrument with me, and a little boy walked up to the piano on the high side, looked at me, I looked at him, I played the song, he sort of blip, blip, blip. And when it was over, it was almost like we could have gone. And he walked away. And I thought, nobody else ever did that before or since. And I could have said, no, you can't play the piano. And like, I can still almost see what his face looked like. And how profound that was that he chose to play the piano. He stopped at the end of the song and he went over and chose something else. And another thing that I remember was when some preschoolers were coming down the hall and the teacher's aide lost control of the class. And they came in and they were running and running and running. And we could have done, they're like 3 and 4 year olds. I could have said, no, you go back to the door and you walk in, blah, blah, blah. But instead, I just started playing fast music. And they kept running and running and running until they got tired. And then they all fell on the floor. And then I sang my hello song. Like it became such an integral part of me to try to like take out what is going on and really go with it. There was one little boy one time where I was saying, we're going to be growing things. And there's one child, so let's be cucumber vines. So one little child got on the floor, they were all on the floor growing like vines. And then one little boy said to me, well, why don't you get on the floor and grow? So I'm like, okay. So I got on the floor and I'm growing and growing. And this kid's name, I still remember, was Jonathan. And he had curly blonde hair. He goes, and now we're going to pick the cucumbers. And they all jumped on me and tickled me. And like, it was like such a fun moment. Instead of me always going like, no, or this is the square thing. Those are the things that I remember the most from my teaching, okay? So these are like preschool experiences. And I remember a child coming in saying, I'm going to run for the entire class. I'm like, okay, go ahead. So everybody's sitting in a circle, I'm singing the hello song, and the kids running and running and running. And of course, they eventually fell over and sat with me. So I look back on these and think how much I didn't fight against stuff that was going on. And I usually don't. But some of these were so memorable to me. And if you find yourself in these situations and allow yourself to go with them, sometimes you have like the really best time ever. When I kind of think of students that are like wanting to do a solo or something, I had this happen recently. A little girl said, I'm going to play Twinkle on the step bells. Now I knew that she could not play Twinkle, but she started singing it and she went up the scale like this. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. She measured the phrase going up and down. And then one kid came up and did it, and he went like, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. And he started going twice as fast because he was like getting nervous. But they were measuring the phrase. Whereas I could have said, oh, there's no way you could play Twinkle. And I think sometimes I've actually said that. So I just let them go with the things. And I was like, that's like so profound. Like they have a really good sense of time. And one time, and
1
then
minute, Leslie. 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. Well, anyway, you can use these things in so many different ways. Like I had an elementary class once and everybody was playing an improv with one mallet and one little girl said, can I have two? I could have said, no, everybody else had one. And I can still remember this girl taking two and playing in thirds. And then now we're talking harmony, right? So it was such a simple idea. And what I've found, and I could go on forever about this, that I'm not so clever, but the class is more clever than I. And if you have a collective group of people who are working with you, the cleverness is 10 times what your cleverness is if you allow yourself to notice and let go. That's enough. That's it.
Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome.
We'll dive into all of that after the next couple presentations. So Emma.
I want to dovetail because Leslie, thank you. So I teach in the summers at Interlochen Arts Academy. It's called the Interlochen Arts Camp. I am a graduate of the Academy, and a couple years ago I was approached by the director of music. Both of our first days at Interlochen, his name is Eric Stromberg, bassoon professor, director of music. His first day at Interlochen and my first day at Interlochen was September 11th, 2001. And so we are very connected as colleagues and friends. And he said, I had no idea that you're a Dalcroze teacher. And I got your name from this guy named Jeremy and wondering if you want to help me build something. And of course I said yes. And so you'll get to hear a little bit from Anthony, but I'll kind of set up the story. These kids are collectively some of the most brilliant musicians I ever get to be around. They're amazing. They're passionate enough that they would go for 6 weeks away from home up to the northern woods in Michigan to what might arguably be less than fabulous food and maybe less than fabulous accommodations, but maybe some of the best art making that they get to do in their whole lives. And they're thrilled. Our first year of Dalcroze at this arts camp, however, was in the middle of this pandemic and was the first thing that they had done pretty much live, many of them. Maybe they had gone back to school for a little bit, but this was their first musical experience in person in probably over a year. And to say the energy was interesting is kind of an understatement. These kids really needed each other. They were really excited to be together, and it was also at the same time kind of an overwhelming experience maybe for everybody. Nothing was perfect. The spaces weren't great. The floors weren't what they needed to be. There was never a piano where you needed it. And maybe those things haven't shifted so much in our second year, but as we head towards our third year, we're hoping that things continue to grow. But I will say that one of the things that I have really tried to give these kids is musical experiences that capture something they're really interested in, relates to the music making that they're already doing, and engages their body in a way that makes them realize that their instrument is their body. And whenever I nailed it or felt like I was really nailing it in those classrooms, it was these experiences of them having something that was really social with their very first instrument and like something that opened up their ears and that they really enjoyed. And so I have had some really amazing opportunities to work with these kids, and often there was worry like maybe the behavior wouldn't be on track to what it needed to be to allow for these size of classes, to have a Dalcroze class. These are all teens, preteens. But by and large, like the sheer joy that they had to be able to move, to do something meaningful with their own selves that related to their music, even our youngest kids who are 8 years old, some of them, could really get it. And also it was a safe space. It is a safe space for them to be expressive. Sometimes they're missing home. Sometimes they've gotten a cold. Sometimes it rained all night and they were stuck in the cabin with people who would not stop talking, etc. And so the social element of like what we do as Dalcrozians has become a very apparent part of that process for me, and something that I've found to be really important. I did want to play a clip of one of the kids speaking. So here is my friend, and this is Jessica.
I've always been like kind of confused about rhythm before taking Eurythmics, but Eurythmics like really allowed me to understand rhythm on a deeper level. And I think that like there's also like the interaction you have with your peers, but just moving around a lot, especially like I have Eurythmics right like my first period. And I think that like a lot, and it always wakes me up, and I think that it helps me understand rhythm a lot more when I'm practicing my pieces. And yeah, I think I've had a lot better practices, like having experience in Eurythmics. Thank you so much.
So, like, the idea that she's all of maybe barely 12, that she got that her practicing was different after having these classes, to me was huge. And a quick 20-second clip from my friend Olive here.
Olive, what did you like about Dalcroze Eurythmics, or what is it all about, or what did you feel like you learned from it?
Do you know what it is? I feel like the best part about it was I'm not very social, and the class sort of brought me out. And I made some new friends and learned more about rhythm.
Beautiful.
So maybe it wasn't my goal that my classes were that, maybe looking back I would do other things, but they definitely got some key things about what we do. I think they were also told certain things, like this class will help you with rhythm was a big one. But the fact that they got this idea of something social and interactive, and that we're making connections to their pieces and the work that they were doing outside of that is a really big part of what inspires me to help this program continue to grow. The last clip is a little too long to play, but one kid spoke about that in his mind he composes all the time, and it used to always be in 4/4, but now he does 15/8, which to me was a huge win because I had spent basically the whole week trying to get them out of the meter of 4 and into other meters in their lives. And so to me that was such a huge win that he started to hear things in his own inner ear outside of that. And so I think sometimes what we do is a tool to open a doorway. And sometimes I myself find that I get a little limited with trying to teach my goal, musical goal or movement goal for that lesson plan. And I forget that I'm actually just getting to open a door and invite somebody through. And no matter what their size or age, that magic is possible at any level. And, it was a very magical moment in one of my classes to have the kiddo who had just had the big solo for his for the collage concert, one of the best pianists I have ever heard for that age, come over and ask me, who is a secondary pianist, I would say, but maybe no longer so that I do this work, ask me if I could show him what modes and what progression I was working on in the class that I had just taught. And he was curious how I had made the sounds on the instrument the way that I had. And so like that they are in this space where they're so open is such a special opportunity for us as a Dalcroze community. And I just wanted to share a little bit about that with you guys. And I'm going to let Anthony kind of maybe take it from here. And I'm sure I can fill in some gaps, or if I've missed the mark, my colleagues will let me know and I'll explain more in our talkback session.
Sure, thanks, Emma. So my experience of interlocking was a little different than Emma's. I was given, I was brought on board like a month before. I had no idea what interlocking was. My brother went there actually when he was in high school for a summer as a violinist. And he said, oh, it's great, but he didn't give me much information. And so I walk into this this community that's just, really established. They have their own language. They have their own, this dress code, these traditions that are and I just wandered into the room, and I was really, honored to be there. And really, I took it very seriously to try to listen very carefully and try to integrate into the stream of what was already happening. And I think there's something instructive about that experience to me. As teachers, we are often thrown into a school system or into a different environment, and it's like, so to be sort of reminded of that, to be the new kid on the block, so to speak, was a really eye-opening experience for me. I really efforted to try to take seriously the traditions that they had, but the Dalcroze was a new addition to their work. And I'll say also that, as Emma alluded to, I mean, these children are exceptional at this particular situation. And I've taught very, very exceptional musicians at the preparatory school at Carnegie Mellon. I teach at the Pittsburgh Youth Chorus, and I taught at Shadyside Academy. Like I teach some kids who are pretty proficient, but this was something different. These kids were very special, and at first I was a bit intimidated because I felt like, wow, I mean, they've experienced conductors and musicians on levels that are very, very high, and I really just earnestly put aside any of that. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I just earnestly wanted to try to give them the experience that I know that Eurythmics can deliver, that the Dalcroze method offers. And I just took them back to the basics of the experiences. And I just said, this is what my goal was, basically to try to get them at the end of my 2 weeks that I had with them to be able to articulate what the Dalcroze method was. And I didn't want to tell them that. I just wanted them to experience it. And I wanted them to see if they could identify what was special about this work. And I took them through the basic paces that I did. Actually, if you, on my Substack newsletter, I'll put it in the chat, I wrote pretty extensively while I was there. I put up, lesson plans and things that I did with the children there, and I really tried to make a little bit of a document out of it. So if you are interested in checking that out, I know there's a couple subscribers to my newsletter here have probably seen it, but if you you can see some more specific things like I'm talking about. But I didn't try to reinvent the wheel here, right? This was just like really, really solid, basic Dalcroze introductory work, and they just really ate it right up. And when I interviewed them at the end of my 2 weeks, boy, the answers were just like what? Where did you come up with that? Things like Emma alluded to, the social aspect, they really got that. I mean, I never told them that, but they really got that social aspect. One child said, I think Eurythmics is how you teach your body music. And I was like, what? This is like amazingly deep experiences that these kids at Interlochen had. But I think the thing that might be useful and instructive to the community we've got here is this idea of incorporating the community that's already there. Another thing I was able to do was, because they were such great musicians, like they would sit around before class and just like fool around on the piano and play little duets, and like they were all amazing. And the one girl was playing like this Brahms, I think it's a sonata by Brahms. It's in 3/4. Yeah, da, 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 da. Is that, what I'm talking about? And so I said, great. And so we used it. I said, hey, you play that. And we constructed a little movement activity to it. I think that we tossed balloons maybe to it. I can't remember. But it was then to have her accompany us, and then her playing changed because she was playing for movement all of a sudden. And all of a sudden she was pushing and pulling with the sort of natural feeling of the movers. So incorporating what they're already bringing to the table, affirming their experience, letting them have the experience that they are having, and just accepting that. That kind of alludes to what Leslie was talking about, is just let the children have their experience of it and follow that. You don't need to be the one standing on the podium telling them what to do. They get enough of that. At this experience, it was about being there present with them, allowing them to follow their experience and having that be. And then the other thing I just wanted to briefly mention is that I found some opportunities to expand our community at Interlochen, because Interlochen also has a theater department, an art department, poetry department. They got a whole bunch of departments. And so I kind of wormed my way into actually doing a Eurythmics workshop with their theater students. And that was like probably my highlight of my 2 weeks. And again, I just did the basic introductory theater or introductory Eurythmics, hour with them, and then ask them what they got out of it. And they got totally different things out of it, but it was all super amazing that they were like super interested in exploring that more. So I think like expanding that community and trying to just work your way in and not bend people towards you so much as to just try to get into the stream of what's happening already and try to figure out how you can be useful in these environments. I think this is like really important work for our method, is to try to be present in these communities. So I think I'm probably out of time here. I talked too long, but
All good.
thanks
Perfectly
so
on
much.
time.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you,
inviting me to
Anthony.
talk about it, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Go
Can
ahead.
I just start off
No,
with a
go ahead,
question?
Veronica.
Yeah, both of you, Emma and Anthony, mentioned interviewing the kids, and so was that something that the program suggested or that you chose to do? Because that's like some
Well,
really amazing documentation.
Yeah, actually what happened is at my last class with them, or it's one of my last classes, I just asked them, I said, what did you guys get out of this? I do that a lot, honestly. I just kind of ask people like, what's your experience of this? And they like their answers were so gnarly, and I was like, oh, I should have recorded that. So the next class I had, I was like, what's your experience? Boom, camera out, and like just really wanted to like try to document it, because it was so like the first one was like, oh, like I said, I was like unbelievable answers. I was like, this is just scary. And so, yeah, I just was inspired to record it. And then I shared that recording with the administration, because as an advocacy tool, I was figured it's a new program. Do they even know that the kids like it? I don't know, I'm savvy enough with dealing with administrators that I was like, you got to advocate for yourself here in these situations. So I made a recording and sent it to the director like, hey, check out what my kids did. And then, yeah, I'm not sure if that's where Emma got the idea or not to do it as well, but maybe she had the similar impulse that I did.
Well, yes. So Anthony sent me these great videos, and I was like, I had the unsurmountable task of figuring out how to add 2 new teachers to our roster for 6 weeks of programming with less than 2 months of lead time. And so basically I called all my dear colleagues and said, we got to make this happen. And I slotted myself in the most awkward 2 weeks of the summer. And so, I knew Anthony was doing a bang up job without a doubt. But when he sent those videos, it was very affirming to me, but also it reminded me that we have this experience because we're in these rooms, and we all have drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak, but we also, we're in an echo chamber. We really believe in this work. We're a dedicated group. We all work really hard or we wouldn't be here. And so I wanted to share some of the magic also that I was seeing and hearing about, and I thought, man, that's not only crafty, but also so useful to know that these kids, you heard from one kiddo who seemed often not to be engaged, but always did everything I asked. And then the other one who I described was one of my trickiest students that I had during my time. And I never let them know that they were tricky, but they were a handful. And to hear them talk about how transformative the experience was for them reminded me why we do this work, and also allowed me to speak to the director of this program and say, I do think you've made a really good choice to have this be part of your curriculum. Not another theory class where they're sitting in a desk, although that can serve a purpose, but how about something that bridges between this idea of performance, I'm on stage, I have to produce, I'm producing a product, and then here I am studying to be able to produce, but what can happen in between that can help connect some dots to really embolden and enliven this music and give these kids new tools and help their confidence. They already can do so much, but there's some missing pieces because they are working them really hard. Like these kids work super, super hard. And so what can be possible for them to gain something more, and also a space where it's more flexible and we can go with the Brahms lullaby, etc. We can see what they want. And I had some kids who were like, hey, we're interested in other music out there. And so I spent part of a week not touching any of their repertoire and instead giving them exposure to lots of music from different parts of the world. So I think that sometimes when we're speaking to our administrations about why this is a valuable work, and especially for this age when they're feeling pretty exposed and pretty vulnerable, there's a lot in there that we can help the other adults around us see as valuable and the other music makers around us see as perhaps transformative.
Really nice. Well, we have just about 20 minutes to open the floor. So does anybody have any comments or questions for any of the presenters, for Leslie or Anthony or Emma, or just for the community? What did their descriptions of choices in their classrooms make you think of, or what questions did it bring up for anyone? So if anyone have anything they want to bring up or add?
Well, I'll speak because I'm not the person that would usually ask people like pre-college. I used to do the pre-college at Carnegie Mellon. And I remember one time we had a demo and someone in the crowd who was one of the teacher trainees, we were showing them what we were doing, asked them to speak. And I can't remember what they said, but I was like blown away by all the different perspectives that were coming at me about what they took from this. And one thing that I heard Anthony say, he said, I just did the work, right? But there's no just in that. It's deeply profound, the simplest Dalcroze experience. Like I realized that through my teaching that I don't have to be like doing something so different that no one else ever did. And he said, I just did it. But I remember when you were talking about the actors, you asked us what you should do. And I just said, just teach them a class. Just do the work. And out of that is like this amazing stuff. Like we don't have to be, coming up with something different than what it is, because it is already so much.
Very nice. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to talk for a second about Leslie's teaching, which has been hugely influential to me. But this idea that just like, so anytime I do an activity with kids and I ask for suggestions, like I do one about ice cream, and I ask, at some point I ask them pick a flavor of ice cream. No matter what flavor of ice cream they pick, I'm using it, right? And these kids will come up with wacky flavors of ice cream that aren't even flavors of ice cream. I don't know where they come up with them. But my policy is, if you give me a suggestion, I will use it. We will use it for this activity. And I think it's super important because it lets the children feel like they have, a validation in their creative impulse. It like lets them know, no, you can make things out of the things in your brain. We can take your goofy thought and we can make something out of it. And it's really, I think, a important thing I've learned from Leslie and from all the teachers at Carnegie Mellon really take that kind of tact, are very flexible to change in a moment. But that's my policy. If a child makes a suggestion, let's do it. We'll go with it.
I'll just add to that, and that when we're teaching teachers, we bring this up. I mean, that, all of those examples are, what I think of as sort of like right down the center of some of the pedagogy that we often preach. And it's not only, and it is profound and absolutely critical for the students who are participating in that kind of room, where their wacky idea is validated and they all of a sudden are seen as a creative and they don't have to feel like someone's about to make fun of them or shut them down. But it's also a really big deal for the teacher, for as a teacher to allow yourself or to be rehearsed as yourself, thinking about how you are able to just turn on a dime and to take whatever the ideas of the room are and be like, yeah, I could turn that into something. That's a really special kind of teaching. And so I think we're all very much learning in this. The the idea of being a burned out Dalcrozian just like doesn't even make sense to me. Like I have a really hard time thinking that that's hardly even possible. The only time I've ever even gotten even close to that has had nothing to do with the Dalcroze work at all. It's always had to do with like administrations and logistics and that kind of stuff, but nothing in our pedagogy seems like they could even make it possible. In fact, it's really quite the opposite. I feel like I get to be the creative pretty much every day I show up. Like we have our own sort of seeds that we've planted, and now we're wondering how they'll open. So I think it hits us both. It's both for rewarding and profound for student and for teacher as you start to practice these, flex these muscles. Yeah, go ahead, Emma.
I both from what Anthony was talking about and what Leslie was talking about, this idea of pulling from your students. I was really pleased. Some of the geek reading I've been doing about habit talks about when you are working on changing a habit, one of the most powerful things about that is choice. And so that there's a structure that you set up, but then there's a choice that you have. When a student has a choice, that makes the learning that much more impactful and powerful to them. And so I really appreciated hearing, Leslie, about you becoming cucumbers, etc. But like, I kept being reminded of that from also Anthony was posting about stuff as he was going, and of course I was, as the coordinator, kind of making sure that everything, the ship wasn't going down and nothing was on fire, so I would kind of check in on stuff and text my colleagues and make sure everybody was okay. But one of the things that I noticed that mattered, and I heard it in both what Leslie and Anthony was talking about, was this idea of like, you can set up a really profound structure in a classroom. They have these rituals that happen, and then a student, if they're comfortable enough, because they know what's going to happen on some level, and they're also excited because they have no idea what's going to happen. Like, yes, I'm going to come in, we're going to move, we're going to do some great things, but then I have a choice. Like, I can say, this is what I'd like to work on, or, oh, are we going to do this thing that we did the last time, or this time when there's an instrument for me to play, maybe I can choose the piano because I've seen you play that every time. Like, how profound is that a student would understand the kind of parameters of what they're in, but then also be able to expand it for themselves. That's a really powerful and empowering moment for a student. And that's what I kept being reminded of, is that, we're big kids, and I think we are a little bit more open to that as a room of Dalcrozians. But the teens were in a similar boat. Like, they really wanted these experiences, and they were actually pretty hungry for them if I could set up a structure that allowed them to feel comfortable.
Very nice. What else, folks? What's it make you think of, or what do we want to ask anyone?
I'll go.
Go, Chris. Great to see you.
Hey, did anybody else have this experience where, like Anthony was talking about getting in the river of what's already going on and then just joining that, or Leslie is like saying yes to what's in the room? Have you had this experience where like you do that so seamlessly that it's just like a nothing burger to the student? Like the other day I had the moving and I said, I'm going to pick a student, I'm going to move to them. You figure out who I'm moving to and you just join. And then I picked one and I did it great. And they were like, yeah, I mean, it's because we're great movers. And I was like, I mean, kind of. I guess my question more succinctly is, once you're in the river, like, what are we doing? We're going with them, but we're also what? Elevating or stretching, or Emma just said stretching the parameters. How do you think about that? Anyone?
Well, to just repeat what Chris has certainly heard me say a bunch of times over the years, and anybody who's been at the meetups, we've said this as well. We teach from the known to the unknown is the thing. So I mean, I think a major first step in any good teaching room is to figure out what are they doing, which is maybe a version of what's the river that's already flowing, or what are the ideas that are already in the room, or what are the things they're willing to do, or what are the things they're happy to do, or things that are easy to do. If we can find just anything that we can get everybody doing, we're like, great, you're willing to do that? Awesome, let's do that. And then with our wonderful bag of Dalcroze tricks and tools and different techniques. We look for ways to, so great, you're willing to do that, let's try to do it this way, let's try to do it that way. And we're just always looking for the next variation. That's how I think of it, as I'm looking for the next variation on whatever it is that was easy or willing. So for the child who's moving like cucumber vines, it's like, great, let's be cucumber vines for a little bit. We're all willing to do that. And now what do we do with a cucumber vine? Well, maybe they came up with themselves. We're going to pick cucumbers, or maybe here's the cucumber vine song, or here's, there's cucumber vines, but there's pumpkin vines, and then there's grapevines. And so like, what's the difference between those? And then, and then we just start to riff and try to think of all the silly different ways we could expand it. And with college students, which is who Chris is working with mostly, it's really not much different. The pacing, I think, is often a bit different when I think of it myself, but the basic gist of it for me is, what are you willing to, what do I think you're willing to do, or what are you showing me you're able to do? And now, as quickly as I can sort of get us on that page, moving on. And now I gotta provoke that in some way. And with the college students, I tell my students, we're going to do some things that are extremely simple, and then I'm going to immediately make you fail. And then we're going to make it easy, and then we're going to make you fail. And then we're going to make it easy. And like, it's constantly, back and forth between what's very easy and what just like, I was okay until you had me do it that way. And then we back and forth and back and forth. And it's in that stretching where so much learning is going on. I don't know if that's helpful, Chris, but that's how I'm thinking. Yeah, Leslie.
Well, I was thinking when Chris was talking about when I used to teach pre-college, and it was 6 weeks long, and probably like week 5.5, I think everybody knew what I was going to do. Like, when I was trying to surprise them, I realized that they were really used to my playing. And if I would have been going to go further, I would have had to change my whole gig, because there was never a time that I think I could surprise them anymore. So I think when you're talking about that movement thing, like, I only went that many weeks, but I always noticed near the end that they all knew everything I was going to do. So I don't know what I would have done. If I'd gone further, I'd have to play in a new style or, something like that. But, when you're thinking about that movement, like, oh yeah, you can do that, so what? Like, that is a conundrum. You kind of hit like into a wall, and you're like, but fortunately for me, it was almost over. So I wasn't like worried about it.
Well, I've taught with Leslie for a lot of years, and I'm pretty sure if we gave her another 2 or 3 weeks, she would have figured out what the next things were. But you get that close to the end and you have to think, well, how am I going to close this up? I can't just start a whole new, reinvent everything at this point. Hey, we still got about 9 minutes. What else are you thinking, Veronica?
I have a question back for Chris, because one way to answer your question about once we're in the river, what are we doing? I think you could become very personal about it and kind of find your own artist or mission statement of like, why are you in this work? And I think we all have different reasons. Like, I think if I were to talk to my dear friend Emma about why we're doing this, I think even though on the surface our lives are like quite similar, I think there's like a hard why doing music, or why are we so invested in community or in relationships, that has to do with who we are on a very deep level. And so I'm curious, like, if Chris or anyone else have ever kind of tried to describe their teaching and their performance life and their like administrative life in terms of a mission statement of like, not a mission that you're gonna like put out on the world to like fill a specific purpose or like a bio page, but like, why is it that you do what you do? And I'll just like try to briefly summarize mine. And I think for me, because I moved countries at age 8, I like really felt separated by not knowing English. Like, I think to me, belonging is very important. And so I want to create places where students and audience members can feel like they are welcome and they belong. And so I would hope that like any river that I try to jump in on, that like I can bring in a little bit of myself into that, of my wish to create a place where people can belong and then grow from there.
Can I play this game? I think this is lovely. So For me, because of being born quite young, 24 weeks, always struggling with health, there's a connection piece. I often was kind of off over here, ill, as it were. So for me, there's an ecosystem of oneself and the ecosystem of the community you're in, the ecosystem of the world that we actually live in. And so this interaction of ecosystems for me and how we interact and connect, that's what fascinates me. And I think this work does that in a really unique way. And so, and it never is the same twice, which I think is true of the world. So there's mine.
I know why I do it, because I grew up in a family of incredibly gifted musicians. In fact, my nephew was up for consideration for 3 Grammys, like from his new album. And, you know, that's high level, world class playing. And my brother was, you know, named one of the top 7 jazz trombone players in the world. And I felt like I wasn't very good, because I had this, my one brother was like the one that everybody looked at Carnegie Mellon to see as the timpani in tune, like in the middle of the band, right? So there was this high level stuff all around me, and I thought that I wasn't very good. And I didn't even major in music to begin with. And then when I did it, I realized how much I wanted to belong to music. So that's where my motivation came from, to help people come into belonging to music.
Nice. Go ahead, Jill.
I have a funny thing of, you're just making me think of, as a kid, I was told what to do all the time, the only girl with 3 brothers. And my thing of why I like to teach is to get kids to do it their way, to express their own way. And I remember the day that I was, you know, don't do it like me, do it like your own self. And a kid just looked up at me and said, I can do it my own way. And that was like, you know, that just sort of put the meaning into my whole work.
It's really nice.
Mhm.
So Stephen, why do you do it? Now I'm curious about you.
I don't know. I'm not sure I have such an easy, simple answer. I mean, I don't know. I very much enjoy it, and I very much enjoy discovering with everybody. You know, there's something about, I mean, my teaching at the university specifically lets us sort of get into the little bit of the philosophical of what's going on. One of the big things I mean, we talk about is this notion of what's it mean to share. And so like to know your music in a way that you could then find a way to share it with others. And so trying to get to that first part, like, what does it mean to know? And how is that different than just playing the right notes in the right order, is a forever fascinating concept for me. And so, so being on a journey with everybody, with the students, you know, trying to figure out how can we figure out the difference between being accountable for playing in tune and playing the right rhythms and playing the right notes at the right time, and yet how that actually isn't quite the same thing as making music. And so we're constantly on that. And then once we think we know, then what would it mean to actually push that forward in a way that other people could have a chance of getting on board with it? So I don't know, there's something in there that's just really, I just love investigating that with people, and take, you know, having the opportunity to ask those questions and then sort of get into it. So I don't know, there's something magical in there. The other one that kind of goes with that is, and it's similar wording, although not quite the exact same point as what Emma was describing earlier. One of the mantras of my class is artistry begins with choices. And so I get to work with my students on, you know, at different times they bring in repertoire, or we're playing certain pieces, or I'll invite them to just do the thing I told them to do. And then we'll pause at different points to wonder, well, are they involved in any choices, or are they merely just doing the thing I told them to do? And so is any of their, and whether you think of it as their creativity or their sort of being present and being awake, or but the question gets to be, are you involved in any choice making right now? Or are you really just I say kind of rude things with my students. I say, are you just a jerk who's just being pushed around? Like what's the difference here? If you're going to play your senior recital and you're going to play repertoire that someone else composed and someone else chose, and now you're just supposed to play all the right notes, how is that like worth anything? Like, where is the artist here? And then we have a long conversation. It says, well, actually your artistry is contained in the way you're making choices about that performance. And so if you're playing pre-composed music and you don't get to choose the order of those pitches, what do you get to choose? And then we talk about the space between the notes, and we talk about the white space on the page, and we talk about the expressive, and talk about you knowing your music yourself to be a certain manner. And then are you able to relay that forward? So I don't know, all of that idea, all of those things are really exciting for me. And there's so much more. We're about at time. I didn't mean to take the last step. Anybody got one more? Anybody want the final word? Go, Anthony.
I'll do it. I don't know. I have a inclination when I was coming up as a teacher that for freedom, like freedom for me is like a really important value, expressive freedom, and I want to instill that in my students to feel free, and unrestrained to express themselves, and this work for me really, as a teacher, it allowed me so much freedom to be myself and to actually pursue things that I think are true, and to stand behind them and not have to compromise that. And so, for me, like the integrity of that and that's I think why I'm drawn to it.
Nice. Those are great final words. What a cool crowd of people. Thank you all so much for showing up. It's on the hour, and we try really hard to start on time and end on time, with the hope that you all, when you do come, you'll think, I can do this. I have time to do this. I can, what's in that? What's just 1 hour? We'll get this in. Veronica, do you know off the top of your head our next meetup?
Sorry, let me tell you all.
It's gonna be number 50.
Number 50. And while Veronica's looking that up, we are in the middle of our scholarship campaign. Last year, we gave close to $15,000 worth of scholarships out. A big chunk of that was towards VDM things. So if you feel so moved, no amount is too small or too large. And I'll pop it in the chat here. Your $10 would make the difference for somebody being able to attend a masterclass, or for a little kiddo getting an instrument that they need. You name it, it would be supportive. And now Veronica will tell you when Masterclass 50 is.
Meetup number 50 is on November 8th or November 9th if you live in Asia or Australia. We have Nana Nguyen coming to present, and Kai Barker and Catherine Kay. So lovely colleagues who have lots to share with us.
And Nana's where's Nana?
Nana is from Vietnam, but she recently moved to Germany, and she was the one who made that lovely scholarship video where she was like on Zoom with her student and showing us everything she had applied.
And then Catherine and
Kay are both from the UK.
Yeah.
And let's see, they all told me they'll confirm their topics this week, so check your emails.
Very good. So short courses are ongoing. You can still jump in on Dawn's course, come back to meetup number 50 and celebrate 50 with us. We're really excited for that particular meetup. And otherwise, thanks so much for coming, everybody. Looking forward to seeing you back and coming and presenting. Thank you.
Thank you all.